Coming up in our newscast tonight. South Korea's National Security Council members convene a meeting to discuss the outcome of the Pyongyang-Washington summit. President Moon Jae-in calls it a success as it's the first step of a process. The top diplomats of Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo meet for talks in South Korea. Discussions center around the outcome of the historic Kim-Trump summit. It's the moment football fans around the world have been waiting for. The 2018 World Cup begins tonight with an opening ceremony slated to take place half an hour before the kickoff match between Russia and Saudi Arabia. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. President Moon Jae-in, who played a crucial role in making the Pyongyang-Washington summit, he did make it happen. The great facilitator revealed his stance on the event's outcome at his NSC meeting. Cha Sang-mi starts things off from the nation's top office.
Seoul's top office convened a full meeting of the National Security Council to further discuss the outcome of the June 12th landmark Singapore summit. President Moon Jae-in chaired the NSC meeting on Thursday afternoon for an hour and a half with his top aides, including Prime Minister Lee Na-kyun, National Security Advisor Chung Eui-yong, and Foreign Affairs Minister Kang Kyung-hwa. President Moon heralded the leaders of North Korea and the United States on their decision to establish a new era of Pyongyang-Washington ties.
무엇보다 새로운 북미 관계 수립을 통해 양국 간 지속되어 왔던 군사적 긴장과 적대 관계를 청산하고 새로운 미래 관계를 열어나가는 것이 북한의 완전한 비핵화와 한반도의 평화를 가져오는 유일한 길임을 함께 인식하였다는 점이 중요합니다. 이로써 남북이 판문점 선언에서 약속했던 완전한 비핵화와 한반도 평화 번영의 목표에 대해 남북미 모두 확실한 공감대 위에 서게 되었습니다.
President Moon also recalled that last year's escalating tension between Seoul and Pyongyang was overcome with the start of the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics in February, followed by the historic inter-Korean summits that led to the unprecedented Pyongyang-Washington summit. He called on his foreign and security officials to lay out details to the denuclearization roadmap so that the process can be carried out accordingly. Moon underscored the importance of approaching peace and development of the Korean peninsula through a more comprehensive stance.
정전 체제의 틀을 벗어나 남북의 균형적 발전을 도모하고 한반도, 나아가서는 동북아 공동 번영을 이룩하기 위한 희망의 발걸음을 내디뎌야 할 것입니다.
Referring to the resumption of inter-Korean cooperation and exchanges, President Moon called for bold and innovative challenges to connect the South and North together. As for the dispute over Trump's comment on the suspension of the joint South Korea-U.S. military exercises, Moon said the South Korean government will cautiously look into the matter and discuss the matter closely with Washington. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
The South Korean liberal leader met separately today with the top diplomats from the United States and Japan. The sessions were held to exchange views on the result of the historic Pyongyang-Washington summit. Hwang Oh-jun shares with us what was discussed.
Less than 48 hours since the Kim-Trump summit in Singapore, and President Moon has started what's being called his post-Singapore diplomacy, meeting with the top diplomats of Washington and Tokyo. On Thursday morning, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met with President Moon to brief him directly on the summit results. According to the Blue House, President Moon congratulated the U.S. on the successful summit with North Korea as he greeted Pompeo, who himself played a key role in making that meeting happen with his trips to Pyongyang. He noted that there are mixed evaluations of the joint agreement signed between President Trump and Kim Jong-un, but said the doubters are out of touch with popular sentiment, referring to the ruling party's landslide win on Tuesday's local election. He called the joint agreement, quote, a great historic achievement.
미국, 일본, 한국인들을 비롯한 전 세계인들로 하여금 전쟁 위협, 또 핵위협, 그리고 또 장거리 미사일의 위협에서 벗어날 수 있게 했다. 는 것만 하더라도 엄청난 가치 있는 일이었다고 생각을 합니다.
Pompeo in return said the Singapore summit was a huge first step and that Seoul and Washington need to closely cooperate to bring about better results in the future and ultimately establish lasting peace on the Korean peninsula. In fact, he asked President Moon to play a leading role in North Korea's denuclearization.
He asked President Moon to closely communicate with Chairman Kim Jong-un in the process of developing inter-Korean relations and in the denuclearization of the North in view of President Moon and Chairman Kim's amicable relationship.
Moon and Pompeo agreed that the most important thing is to ensure that the U.S. and North Korean commitments are carried out quickly and completely. Also, they agreed that Seoul, Pyongyang, and Washington could collaborate on recovering the remains of those killed in the Korean War and of those who are still missing. On Thursday afternoon, President Moon Jae-in met with Japanese Foreign Minister Taro Kono. According to the Blue House, the South Korean leaders shared detailed results of the two inter-Korean summits and the Pyongyang-Washington summit. They discussed how to go about negotiations with Pyongyang post-Singapore through close cooperation between South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. President Moon wanted not only to go over the outcomes of the historic dialogue in Singapore, but also to seek future-oriented bilateral cooperation with South Korea's neighbors and to make sure the declaration made by President Trump and Kim Jong-un becomes a turning point in the establishment of lasting peace on the Korean peninsula. Panmunjom, Arirang News.
Turning to a trilateral sit-down between the top diplomats of South Korea, the United States, and Japan now. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo briefed the duo on the summit, and the three reaffirmed their commitment to closely coordinating to help achieve denuclearization and peace on the peninsula. Park Hee-jun has the highlights from that gathering.
South Korea, the U.S., and Japan will continue to maintain close cooperation to achieve North Korea's CVID.
The world should rest assured that the United States, the Republic of Korea, and Japan remain committed to achieving the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea.
South Korean Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Japanese Foreign Minister Taro Kono held a trilateral session in Seoul just 2 days after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump signed a statement agreeing to pursue complete denuclearization. At a joint press conference following the meeting, the three countries said they welcomed the adoption of the statement, in which Kim reaffirmed his commitment to complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula, and Trump promised to guarantee the North Korean regime security. They said the summit is just the beginning and that Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo will continue cooperating to implement the statement. Kang and Pompeo showed a united front on their ironclad alliance as well. Kang reaffirmed that South Korea's alliance with the U.S. is stronger than ever and that U.S. forces will continue to play an important role on the Korean peninsula.
And lastly, Secretary Pompeo and I reaffirmed that the ROK-U.S. alliance, which celebrates its 65th anniversary this year, is robust as ever, that the United States forces in Korea has played and will continue to play a crucial role for deterrence and peace and stability on the Korean peninsula.
Pompeo also stressed that there will be no lifting of sanctions or any kind of economic benefits given to North Korea before its complete denuclearization. After wrapping up his schedule in Seoul, Pompeo will meet senior Chinese officials and possibly President Xi Jinping in Beijing to brief them on the details of the North Korea-U.S. summit. He's also expected to ask for Beijing's support for the follow-up measures to implement the joint statements before he heads back home in the late evening. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Inter-Korean high-level military talks are held for the first time in over a decade. Generals from the two sides are at the border village of Panmunjom discussing ways to ease cross-border tensions as a follow-up to the Panmunjom Declaration. Also in the background is this week's freeze-for-freeze deal between Pyongyang and Washington, in which the North promised to halt its nuclear program, and the U.S. said it would be suspending its war games in the region. Our Park Ji-won has been keeping a close eye on these talks so far. We'll go live to her now at Seoul's Office for Inter-Korean Dialogue. Ji-won, it's been going on for a while.
Daniel, today's talks are nearing their end at Tongilgak on the North Korean side of Panmunjom, some 50 kilometers north of Seoul. According to South Korea's Defense Ministry Joint Press Corps, the two sides are currently working on a joint agreement, yet no details announced as of now. The talks began at around 10 a.m. Korea time, with 5 delegates on each side, and they've been immersed into talks for hours now, even foregoing a lunch break. Although details of the talks are yet to be unveiled, the chief negotiators, Major General Kim Jongun from the South Korean delegation and Lieutenant General An Ik-sun from the North Korean delegation made their opening remarks to the media earlier in the day. A lieutenant general in North Korea is equivalent to a major general in South Korea. And let's hear what the two chief negotiators spoke before the talks began.
As the two leaders have already presented a clear map regarding military affairs, I think both South and North Korea can achieve the expected results in these highly anticipated talks, if we discuss the issues in the firm spirit of the Panmunjom Declaration.
At this historic moment when the whole Korean nation is attempting to promote peace and prosperity, I am deeply moved to see North and South Korea's military authorities sitting down here face to face to discuss military issues in order to implement the Panmunjom Declaration.
The talks are set for one day only, and the joint agreement is expected to be announced sometime later in the evening. I will bring you updates in the next newscast. Back to you, Daniel.
All right, Jae-in, thank you for being out there for us. We appreciate it. Now, it's already been a few days since the summit of the century wrapped up. Still, there's a lot of buzz surrounding it. One of the most talked about subject is the video the U.S. Commander-in-Chief prepared for the regime's leader. Trump tried to show what a great place North Korea can become. But did the message get through? Lee Ji-won files this report from Singapore.
There can only be two results. One of moving back, or one of moving forward.
At their summit on Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump presented his North Korean counterpart Kim Jong-un with a 5-minute-long video, which he also showed to the press later that day and tweeted out to the world. He called it a story of opportunity, showing golden sunrises, gleaming skylines, and world monuments, with the North Korean flag fluttering between them. The video narrates the bright future the U.S. says awaits North Koreans in Pyongyang. But at several points mixed in are black and white images of missile launches and the regime's militarization. The point of the video was clear, to convey to Kim that he has choices, each of which comes with consequences, good or bad. Many found the video bizarre, but a North Korea expert in Singapore says the decision to play was understandable, considering the president's experience in show business. But he added that it could have been seen as condescending.
The future remains to be written.
It is telling Mr. Kim Jong-un, in the least, to imagine these scenarios. But you know, the thing is that we need to give Mr. Kim Jong-un, as the leader of his own country, the due respect as someone who is intelligent and sophisticated and informed enough to be able to imagine for himself what the options are.
Kim's reaction to the video? Only those at the summit know, but according to Trump, Kim seemed to like it.
I showed it to him today, actually during the meeting, toward the end of the meeting, and I think he loved it. About 8 of their representatives were watching it, and I thought they were fascinated by it. I thought it was well done. I showed it to you because that's the future.
In fact, the video did show consideration for its audience, with Korean text overlaid, Korean narration, and even some specifically North Korean vocabulary. Professor Ong Webb said the U.S. did not seem to have ill intentions in making the video, but he added that the execution could have been better.
And it needs to be more sensitive going forward, because the whole situation is very sensitive. We know how a little word or a little deed can actually derail the whole process. Every picture and every frame has 1,000 words, and can have tons of different meanings.
But regardless of what Kim thought of the video, the expert said he is certain that the North Korean leader has seen the economic and other possibilities for his people and his regime through the summit and his visit here. 이지원, Arirang News, Singapore.
Kim Jong-un took a night stroll with a couple of Singaporean ministers, checking out some of the most iconic attractions of the city. What impression did North Korean leader get from the experience, and how would it impact his thoughts on economic development? Oh Jung-hee turned to some experts for their analysis.
In 2015, Singapore hosted a summit between Chinese President Xi Jinping and Taiwan's then leader Ma Ying-jeou. Now it's hosted another meeting that'll go down in history, the first ever face-to-face between a North Korean leader and a sitting American president. On the night before the summit, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un took a tour around some of Singapore's most iconic attractions, the Gardens by the Bay and the Marina Bay Sands. Kim's nighttime stroll on Monday resembled his right-hand man Kim Yong-cheol's trip to New York, where U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo showed him the skyscrapers outside the window. It was to send the message that economic prosperity is Pyongyang's to gain if it gives up its nuclear weapons.
The significance of it, of course, is to see what it means to develop a tourism industry, what it means to develop a hospitality industry, and what it means to develop just basically infrastructure in the center of the city that can serve as a hub, as an iconic attraction to the rest of the world. And I think that message was not lost on somebody like Chairman Kim Jong-un.
I think the more important here are not Kim Jong-un, but people who were accompanying him, his delegation, as well as North Korean media people, as well as security people. Those people have not experienced, have not seen those images of the economic development, and they saw it. And also we know that the North Korean newspaper published the photos from Singapore, so it also creates this kind of additional exposure to the outside world, to the people in North Korea.
According to Pyongyang's Rodong-Sinmun newspaper, Kim has said he hopes to learn from Singapore in various ways. In what aspects would the North Korean leader be able to relate to the prosperous Southeast Asian country?
One of the major distinguishing aspects of Singaporean economic development is that it generated hugely successful economic development while its ruling party, People's Action Party, or PAP, has maintained their political dominance over decades. So although there are important differences in terms of institution, political economy, regional security environment, I'm sure there are important insights that Kim can take away.
It was Kim's first trip abroad other than China. All eyes are on what impression he got from his visit to Singapore and how that'll impact his thoughts on developing the North's economy, as well as making Pyongyang a less reclusive regime. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News, Singapore.
Going back to the nation's top office again, at today's press briefing, Cheondae's spokesperson read out a statement from President Moon expressing his appreciation for the landslide election victory given to his ruling Democratic Party of Korea.
I'm overwhelmed by your support, the highest voter turnout in 23 years for a local election. I know this does not mean you think everything in this country has been run perfectly, but despite our faults and shortcomings, you've put your faith in us, and for that, we humbly thank you.
The Liberal leader also wrote that he will not allow the victory to make him prideful or complacent. Moon vowed to put his fellow Koreans first, adding there's still a long way to go until all his campaign promises are fulfilled. In stark contrast, it's a gloomy atmosphere over at the conservative blocs. Two leaders from the opposition party decided to step down to take responsibility for the shocking election results. So Bin zooms in on this clear indicator of major changes to come.
The main opposition Liberty Korea Party chief Hong Jun-pyo and minor opposition 바른미래 Party co-leader Yoo Seung-min resigned on Thursday after their parties suffered a crushing defeat in South Korea's local elections held on Wednesday. In separate press conferences, both leaders said they'd take responsibility for the election defeat and that they respected people's choice. In Wednesday's election, the main opposition won only 2 out of the 17 posts for mayor and provincial governor and just won only 1 parliamentary seat in the by-elections. The minor opposition party didn't win a single seat in the by-election. The biggest victory was claimed by the ruling Democratic Party of Korea, taking home 14 posts out of the 17 posts for mayors and governors and dominating the heavily populated areas of Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province. It also captured strong conservative regions like Ulsan, Busan, and Gyeongsang-namdo province, with the exception of just 2 regions. As for the Liberty Korea Party, the floor leader Kim Sung-tae will serve as the acting chief for the meantime. Kim plans to hold an emergency meeting of the party officials to discuss post-election strategy. 서보빈, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, another hike is decided by the U.S. Fed once again by its usual 25 basis points. A decision reportedly made as America's economy is finally picking up a head of steam after several years in the doldrums. Kim Hae-sung help us look beyond the digits.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has raised its benchmark interest rate for the second time this year by a 0.25 percentage point to a range of 1.75% to 2%. It's the 7th hike since 2015. The Fed also dropped its pledge to keep rates low enough to stimulate the economy for some time, reflecting a U.S. economy that's getting stronger.
Economic growth appears to have picked up in the current quarter, largely reflecting a bounce back in household spending. Business investment continues to grow strongly, and the overall outlook for growth remains favorable. Fiscal policy is boosting the economy. Ongoing job gains are raising incomes and confidence.
Quarterly economic projections released at the meeting show Fed officials expect the economy to grow 2.8% this year, up 0.1% from its forecast in March. And a majority of policymakers say they now expect a total of 4 interest rate increases this year after they had been split about whether to raise rates 3 or 4 times. U.S. unemployment fell to 3.8% in May, the lowest since 2000, signaling the Fed is at or near its maximum employment goal. Inflation is also snapping into line, with fresh projections Wednesday indicating it would run above the Fed's 2% target, hitting 2.1% this year and remaining there through 2020. In recent months, emerging economies have been seeing capital outflows and their currencies weaken against the stronger greenback, contributing to currency crisis in countries such as Argentina, Turkey, and Brazil.
The European Central Bank is set to meet Thursday to discuss when to end its bond purchasing program. All this global monetary tightening is increasing volatility in some emerging markets. As for now, South Korea has strong fundamentals like ample foreign reserves to stave off a rapid capital outflow. But with the U.S. set for 2 more rate hikes, whether that continues remains to be seen.
The U.S.-Korea rate gap has now widened from 0.25% in March to 0.5%, and that's putting more pressure on the Bank of Korea to raise interest rates later this year. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
The wait is finally over for football fans around the globe. The 2018 World Cup kicks off in a matter of hours with the host nation Russia taking on Saudi Arabia. Our Jongun is standing by for us near the stadium for the opening match in Moscow. Hi, Jongun, what's the atmosphere there like?
Good evening, Daniel. I'm just in front of the Luzhniki Stadium where the opening ceremony will take place less than 4 hours. People from all over the world have gathered around here just to see Russia's largest stadium announcing the start of a month-long global football festival. A few hours ago, I've been down to the stadium, which can hold over 80,000 spectators, and ticket holders for the opening match were crowding in already for the World Cup's opening ceremony. The 2018 FIFA World Cup opening ceremony will have a slightly different format to previous editions of the tournament. This time, the ceremony will focus on musical acts and will take place much closer to kickoff, just half an hour before the start of the opening match between Russia and Saudi Arabia. During the opening ceremony, British music icon Robbie Williams will entertain the stadium crowd together with around 500 Russian dancers and gymnasts. After the show, the tournament's trophy will be revealed by the 2-time World Cup champion Ronaldo just before the opening match. That's all for me now at Moscow. Back to you, Daniel.
All right, we appreciate the updates. We hope you don't have too much fun out there without us. Time for us to turn to Michelle back at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, what's the weather like for the 2018 World Cup opening ceremony, which will be starting real soon?
Daniel, due to the high oceanic climate, the weather in Russia can change a lot in just a couple of hours. The conditions at Moscow's Luzhniki Stadium, where the opening is being held, will be very dry and mostly cloudy with the cooler temperatures of around 14 to 16 degrees Celsius. In Korea, it showers again tonight and until the morning. The central areas and the south of Gangwon province will get up to 20 millimeters. But into the day, the mercury will rise fast up with the blazing sun. The morning temperatures are about 10 degrees cooler compared to our daytime highs, so waking up to 18 degrees Celsius. Daegu and Gyeongju begins with 16 and 17 degrees respectively. The daily highs over in Seoul will hit up to 28 degrees tomorrow, Gwangju 29, whereas Busan is considerably cooler at 23 degrees. The weekend will also be hot and sunny, so take good care to protect yourselves from the heat. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have in store for you on tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Wherever you may be tuning in from, thanks for staying with us.